I'm Anil Kumar, and in this video, we'll try to prove congruent complements theorem. Let us first understand what are complementary angles. So let us say if we have a line, and if I divide this line by a bisector which goes perpendicular to it, then we have 90 degrees, right? And if we have two angles whose sum is 90 degrees, in that case, these two angles are termed as complementary angles, right? So let me number these angles as angles, let us say 1 and 2. So we have angles 1 and 2, and these two, their sum is 90 degrees, and they are called complementary angle. Well, it is not necessary that two angles should be adjacent to each other as shown here. We could have another angle elsewhere. For example, I'll draw one here. So instead of which is equal, let me not say equal to 1, that is what we need to prove. Let us say that we have another angle here, kind of like this, okay? And let us say that this angle is 3 for us. Now, but angle 3 and angle 2 are also complementary, since if we add them up, it is 90 degrees. So that is what we have. Now the theorem states that if two angles, 1 and 2, are complementary, and if one of these is complementary with the third angle, then the first and the third angles are also congruent, right? They are congruent angles. So that is what the theorem is. Let me state the theorem as such. It says angles complement to the same angle or to congruent angles are congruent, right? So what we have here is, rather what I should say is given to us here is that angle 1 and angle 2 are complements, or we can say complementary angles. And angle 2 and angle 3 are also complementary angles. This is what is given to us. Theorem states that if angle 1 and 2 are complementary and angle 2 and 3 are complementary, in that case angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent. So what we need to prove here is that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. This is what we have to prove, right? So to prove this, we'll follow two-column method. We'll write statements on one side and reasons on the other. So we'll give statements and reasons. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually proving a part of it. Why a part of it? It says angles complement to the same angle or to congruent angles. So we are doing same angle. We have angles complement. So angle 2 is complement with 1 and angle 2 is complement with 3. This is what we are given. And we have to prove that angle 1 and 3 are congruent, right? So this part of the theorem is what I'm doing now. You can have another angle which is congruent to angle 3 and then extend the proof, correct? Now let's begin by what is given to us. So what is given to us is that angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary. We are also given that angle 2 and angle 3 are complementary, right? The reason is given. Okay. Now if they are complementary, it means what? It means that the measure of angle 1 plus measure of angle 2 should be 90 degrees, and measure of angle 2 and measure of angle 3 should also be 90 degrees, right? That is the definition, let me write here now, of complementary angles. Is it okay? Now, from here, these two equations, both are 90 degrees. So what can we write? We can say that the measure of angle 1 plus measure of angle 2 is indeed equals to measure of angle 2 plus measure of angle 3, right? This is, we can substitute from the equation 2, correct? So that is from substitution. Now, as you know, measure of angle 2 is indeed equal to measure of angle 2. That is the reflexive property. And therefore, we get measure of angle 1 as equal to measure of angle 3, right? This is when you subtract measure of angle 2 from both, right? So we did subtraction. When the measure of angles is same, then the angles are congruent, correct? So we get that the angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and that is by definition of congruent angles. I hope these steps are easy to understand, and you can follow these steps to also prove similar situation for supplementary angles. I hope that helps. Thank you and all the best.